This is the moment Donald Trump lost control of his own family. This is the notification that has sent shockwaves through Mar-a-Lago and sent shivers down the spines of Republican leadership this Thursday morning. This is the visual nobody expected to see. The kind of moment that shifts history in ways that are immediate, tangible, and terrifying for the person at the center of it. At exactly 9:47 a.m. on Thursday, February 13th, 2026, Ivanka Trump delivered a sealed affidavit to federal prosecutors. The contents of that document are already shredding what had been her father's last line of defense, a line so delicate and so dependent on loyalty that no one, least of all Donald Trump himself, ever imagined it could crumble from within. Donald Trump, already battling mounting criminal investigations, declining poll numbers in key swing states, and a political party quietly starting to distance itself from him, now faces a betrayal the consequences of which he cannot even begin to anticipate. The one person he assumed would never turn his daughter has become the pivot point for an investigation that could redefine the scope of his legal and political life. Ivanka's affidavit spans 23 pages, and each page is said to reveal secrets that are as explosive as they are damning. Inside that leather briefcase, she handed over a flash drive containing financial records, encrypted communications, and classified materials Trump believed were long gone. Wire transfers totaling $847 million. Email chains connecting Trump to officials in the United Arab Emirates, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. Voice recordings, documents, communications, all evidence that prosecutors say could substantiate claims of criminal wrongdoing that reach far beyond the typical allegations of corruption or obstruction. Trump's empire, built on branding, spectacle, and loyalty, is now facing a breach from the inside, and the breach is personal. Just 2 years ago, Trump had announced a business venture designed to reassert his dominance and prove, once again, that he was the master dealmaker. The Trump Tower Dubai project promised luxury apartments, a golf course, and his name in gold letters stretching 50 stories into the skyline. Investors were promised 30% returns, while supporters were promised that American influence would expand in the Middle East through a combination of diplomacy, commerce, and strategic positioning. But the deal was never just a real estate project. It was leverage. It was access. It was the collection of intelligence that should have never been shared outside the boundaries of national security. Classified briefings were given to business partners. Secret Service resources were used not for protection, but for private gain. Allies watched in horror as Trump consistently chose profit over prudence, and the warnings came immediately. Former national security officials spoke publicly, describing the arrangement as unprecedented, dangerous, and potentially treasonous. Ethics watchdogs filed lawsuits. Trump dismissed them all with the kind of deflection he has relied on for decades: deep state conspiracies, liberal hysteria, jealous competitors. He believed his brand could withstand any storm, that his supporters would never question his motives, and that his family would remain a wall against accountability. But he assumed wrong. At 9:43 a.m., Ivanka entered a secure facility in Washington, D.C., not as a daughter of a former president, but as a witness with information that could bring the entire Trump empire under scrutiny. Inside the room were 3 federal prosecutors, 2 FBI agents, and her own attorney. For 17 minutes, the air was heavy with silence as documents were reviewed, signatures verified, procedures confirmed. Then, the lead prosecutor looked up, their voice measured and precise, and asked if she understood the implications of what she was providing. Ivanka's response, according to those present, was chilling in its clarity. She understood that her father had broken the law, she understood that she possessed evidence that proved it, and she understood that she would no longer protect him. There was no hesitation, no tears, just a calm and resolute acceptance that the walls closing in around her father would be built from her testimony. While this was unfolding in Washington, Donald Trump was on stage at a rally in Ohio, completely unaware that his own daughter had just become the government's most significant witness. At the same moment, Jared Kushner was deep in discussions with his legal team in New York, weighing potential immunity deals. And a private jet registered to the Trump Organization was reportedly en route to Dubai with 7 passengers who had failed to file proper customs declarations. Within 2 hours, Trump Media and Technology Group stock had plummeted 18.4%. Investors, responding not to loyalty but to risk, abandoned the ship. The market's verdict was unequivocal. Trump had become untouchable in name only, toxic in practice. Inside the Department of Justice, an emergency conference call was convened at 11:15 a.m. involving senior DOJ officials, the lead prosecutor, representatives from the National Security Council, and FBI leadership. The subject was simple, though terrifying in its implications. How to handle evidence of such explosive magnitude. Evidence that a former president's daughter had willingly handed over. Evidence that could implicate multiple foreign governments. Evidence that raised questions of espionage, conspiracy, and money laundering. Officials debated the consequences of action versus inaction. One asked, "Are we prepared for the backlash? Are we prepared for what this does to the country?" Another countered, "Are we prepared for what happens if we ignore evidence of treason because it's politically inconvenient?" Every consideration was meticulously weighed, the decision deliberate, move forward and move fast. Ivanka's motivations are not difficult to understand. Survival, legacy, protection of her own family. She is both a product of her father's empire and a mother determined to shield her children from the fallout of his actions. Sources suggest a confrontation at Mar-a-Lago in January crystallized her decision. What was meant to be a discussion of family, business, and legal strategy became a dramatic standoff. Trump reportedly demanded that she destroy evidence, lie to investigators, and publicly discredit anyone threatening the family's interests. Ivanka's reply was decisive. She would not go to prison for her father. She would not let her children grow up ashamed of their family name because of his actions. She demanded accountability. The exchange reportedly ended with Trump screaming threats, accusations of betrayal, and personal attacks that underscored the deep fracture between father and daughter. That moment marked the shift from loyalty to defection, and it marked the beginning of the unraveling. This defection is not symbolic. It is structural. The Trump inner circle of family protectors, long thought impenetrable, has been replaced with federal prosecutors equipped with insider testimony, financial documents, and classified information. Trump can no longer control the narrative. He cannot silence witnesses with non-disclosure agreements. He cannot rely on the shield of familial loyalty. He is exposed, and the exposure comes from the very person he trusted most. Legal analysts call this the ultimate betrayal. A family torn apart, a dynasty crumbling, a former president facing the unthinkable consequences he cannot escape. The potential legal ramifications are staggering. The Department of Justice has indicated that it is reviewing charges under the Espionage Act, the Foreign Agents Registration Act, money laundering statutes, and obstruction of justice provisions. The allegations include sharing classified information with foreign nationals for personal financial gain, using government resources for private business, conspiring to defraud the United States, and tampering with witnesses. The political calculus is striking. This is not a partisan pursuit alone. This is a child providing evidence against a parent, a scenario that prosecutors recognize as strong corroboration, virtually unassailable. If the evidence leads to charges under the Espionage Act, mandatory minimums and exposure of classified operations could be unavoidable. Intelligence partners around the world could be forced to reassess every interaction, every shared secret, every exchange with the United States during Trump's presidency. The dominoes do not stop there. Individuals involved in these deals now face criminal exposure themselves. As they attempt to save themselves, they could implicate one another. The network could unravel entirely, revealing perhaps the largest political and financial scandal in modern American history, touching scores, possibly hundreds of people across government, business, and foreign intelligence. Global powers are watching. China, Russia, and other actors observe a former president whose own family has turned against him, whose secrets are now in federal hands, whose political influence is evaporating. They are assessing leverage, opportunity, and the potential use of desperation as a tool. Trump, cornered by his daughter's testimony, could become unpredictable in ways that the world has yet to measure. Where is Trump's support? Where is the Republican leadership that once rallied around him unquestioningly? Silence. Kevin McCarthy has issued no statement. Mitch McConnell's office has declined comment, citing ongoing legal matters. The RNC offered a perfunctory acknowledgement of respect for the legal process. Behind the carefully measured words lies a political reality. They understand that Ivanka's cooperation signals overwhelming evidence. They see Trump's legal position as beyond saving. They distance themselves to protect careers, to reposition, to abandon without ever acknowledging the depth of their calculation. This creates a split in the party that is profound and likely irreparable. Loyalists will claim she was coerced, influenced, or brainwashed. Moderates will see opportunity to move beyond Trump. A divided Republican Party cannot operate effectively on a national scale. Messaging falters. Fundraising falters. Political cohesion collapses. Meanwhile, inside Mar-a-Lago, Trump reportedly oscillates between rage and disbelief. Staff describe sleepless nights, obsessive calls, and furious social media posts. He asks repeatedly, "How could she do this? How could my own daughter betray me?" Psychologists would describe this as a narcissistic collapse. When identity is built on untouchability and the illusion shatters, the emotional fallout is extreme. Staff limit access to phones, monitor social media, and attempt to prevent statements that could worsen the legal storm. The Trump Tower Dubai project becomes emblematic, not merely a real estate venture, but a symbol of his prioritization of wealth over integrity, profit over loyalty, and spectacle over accountability. The empire he wanted to be remembered for as the ultimate dealmaker now risks defining him as a father whose greed destroyed the bonds of family. Reality cannot be spun. Evidence cannot be denied. Sworn testimony from a family member is irrefutable. Lies to the public, narratives constructed through media manipulation, all fail against documents, recordings, and affidavits. Reality catches up. Reality enforces consequences. And in this case, reality has arrived with a flash drive, a briefcase, and the resolve of a daughter who has decided the law is more important than loyalty. As of Thursday afternoon, February 13th, 2026, Trump is isolated at Mar-a-Lago, surrounded by lawyers outlining rapidly shrinking options. Ivanka is reportedly in federal witness protection, receiving credible threats. Prosecutors have announced a press conference for Monday. Republican leaders have turned away. His financial empire is collapsing under investor panic and bank withdrawals. The most famous former president in U.S. history is, paradoxically, also one of the most powerless figures in the nation at this precise moment. He is exposed, vulnerable, and facing the inevitable. The coming days are likely to be chaotic. Expect attempts to publicly attack Ivanka before evidence is revealed. Attempts to discredit her as manipulated, coerced, or influenced. Expect legal and constitutional crises if he attempts to release classified information. But the foundation has already been destroyed. Family loyalty, the shield that protected him for decades, cannot be rebuilt in a single day, especially after such a decisive break. Trump versus Trump, father versus daughter. A federal investigation armed with inside testimony and authenticated evidence now has the smoking gun it needs. The legal system, slow but methodical, will proceed document by document, step by step. A man who has long believed consequences were for other people is learning that they can, in fact, arrive through the actions of his own child. There are three things to watch closely in the coming days: the Monday DOJ press conference, Jared Kushner's stance on potential immunity deals complicated by spousal privilege, and whether any Republican leader publicly defends Trump, because silence, this profound, speaks volumes about the perceived finality of his situation. The story is not over, but the trajectory is clear. Documents are real. Testimony is on record. The consequences are now inevitable, and whatever happens next will define American politics for years to come. Monday arrives, and the nation watches with bated breath as the Department of Justice steps up to the podium. Cameras flash, microphones capture every syllable, and behind the polished veneer of the press room, the gravity of what is about to be disclosed is palpable. The DOJ announces a series of indictments that are historic in scope, historic in implication, and historic in the sheer shock they deliver. Donald Trump, the man who once commanded the world stage, now faces charges that span multiple federal statutes, including conspiracy, obstruction of justice, violations of the Espionage Act, and money laundering. Every allegation is tied directly to documentation and testimony provided by Ivanka Trump. The golden child has become the linchpin of justice, her actions reshaping the trajectory not only of a family dynasty, but of American political history. Financial records reveal the depth of the connections to foreign governments, and the flash drives she turned over provide unambiguous proof of wire transfers, communications, and meetings designed to benefit Trump financially while compromising U.S. interests. Prosecutors emphasize that the evidence is not circumstantial, not speculative. It is a record of transactions, conversations, and decisions that implicate the former president in a pattern of behavior that crosses the line from unethical to criminal. Analysts, legal experts, and former intelligence officials are already calling this one of the most significant cases in American history, noting that it combines elements of financial crime, national security breaches, and familial betrayal in a way that is unprecedented. Inside Mar-a-Lago, Trump reportedly reacts with disbelief and fury. Staff attempt to contain him, blocking calls, monitoring social media, and warning that every public statement could deepen the legal jeopardy he faces. Sources describe him alternating between rage-fueled outbursts and sullen withdrawal, the narcissistic collapse of a man who believed he was untouchable now complete. Every advisor, every confidant faces a difficult calculation. Continue defending him and risk personal and professional ruin, or step back and let the legal system take its course. The isolation is absolute. The control he once wielded over information, over perception, over narrative, utterly gone. The political fallout is immediate. Republican leaders, who once parroted loyalty as if it were a creed, are now forced to navigate treacherous waters. Some attempt to maintain distance without appearing cowardly. Others openly criticize or question Trump's judgment. The party, already divided, now faces the reality that the man who dominated its base for years may soon be incapacitated by the legal system. Strategists note that this fracture could reshape the next decade of American politics as the struggle between loyalists and pragmatists intensifies. Fundraising efforts stall. Messaging coherence collapses. A party once united under a singular figurehead now confronts a vacuum of leadership, with Ivanka's decision acting as the catalyst. The global implications cannot be overstated. Intelligence agencies across the world are reviewing the implications of compromised classified information. Allies who once operated under the assumption of trust must now assess what sensitive data may have been exposed, shared, or leveraged for private gain. Adversaries watch closely, calculating whether the chaos inside Trump's circle could be exploited for strategic advantage. Diplomats, analysts, and national security officials are all confronted with the reality that one man's pursuit of personal wealth has created vulnerabilities with potential geopolitical consequences that will echo for years. Public reaction is polarized, but the magnitude of the story ensures coverage across every platform, from cable news to social media feeds. Supporters of Trump insist that Ivanka was coerced or influenced, that this is a political witch hunt. Critics celebrate the apparent triumph of law and accountability, noting that no one, not even a former president, is above the law. The country is divided, yes, but there is also a sense that a precedent has been set. The family loyalty that once shielded a powerful figure can be broken, and when it is, the consequences are unrelenting. For Trump himself, the legal path ahead is fraught with uncertainty. The indictments alone are not the end. They are the opening act of what will likely be a protracted, high-stakes legal battle. Court appearances, motions, negotiations, and potential plea deals loom on the horizon. And every step is shadowed by the fact that the individual who once represented his ultimate safety, his daughter, is now an instrument of accountability. Ivanka's actions are not merely tactical. They are emblematic. They represent a turning point, a moment when personal and political reality collide, and when the consequences of past choices can no longer be evaded. As this saga continues to unfold, the lessons are stark. Power, wealth, and influence can shield a person from scrutiny for a time, but when those protections erode from within, when loyalty fractures, there is no recovery. The Trump family, long synonymous with spectacle, branding, and defiance, now faces a reckoning that is intimate, public, and unrelenting. Donald Trump, a man who once believed he could bend circumstances to his will, is forced to confront the immutable truth that some forces cannot be controlled, not the law, not the courts, not even the loyalty of one's own child. As we look ahead, the focus turns to the next chapters: the judicial process, the political ramifications, and the international consequences of a presidency whose private dealings have now been laid bare. Every action, every strategy, every calculated decision made by Trump and his inner circle will be scrutinized under the unforgiving light of legal and public examination. And through it all, Ivanka Trump stands as the figure who chose accountability over loyalty, evidence over protection, and the rule of law over familial complicity. This is the end of one story and the beginning of another. The unraveling of a political dynasty, the assertion of legal authority over personal privilege, and a cautionary tale about the limits of loyalty in the face of unambiguous wrongdoing. Trump versus Trump is no longer a metaphor. It is the reality of February 2026. A moment that will define the trajectory of the nation, the contours of the Republican Party, and the legacy of a man who once believed himself untouchable. History will remember this as the moment the empire fell, And the person who pushed it over was the golden child, the daughter, the witness.